Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mile High Sports Symposium. I am your host, JT Matthews, at JT Matthews01 on X, and I'm with the Doctor, Nicholas Manning, at DR_and Manning on X as well. Doc, it feels like a long time since we've done this, even though it hasn't really been that long.
Yeah.
How are you doing? Happy Wednesday. It's kind of rainy out there.
Yeah, we're in the Pacific Northwest apparently till 3 o'clock, and then it's supposed to be like 75 through the weekend, so that's dope. I'm doing all right since the last time we chatted. Took my oldest to a Boy Scout camp. He had fun.
Nice.
That's what matters.
It was actually nice out at that point.
Yeah. The weather was good. He behaved well, all that good stuff. So it was a good weekend. What about you? How are you, man?
A win overall. I'm good. It's a little rainy and dreary out, but I'm off today, so that always makes a difference. It always feels nice to have a day off midweek, and I just got to gear up for the last 2 days before the weekend. So things could be worse. I'll say that.
That's true. Yeah, I love it. Yep, could be worse. First world problems, like the weather, right. But we have a roof and all that good crap. So yeah, it's all good in the hood, as the kids say.
Do they still say that?
Yep. Took a survey the other day. 4 out of 5 youngins.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So yeah, here we are.
All right. Let's jump into some
Let's
sports.
Do it.
Since we have last been on, the Colorado Avalanche have been eliminated from the playoffs. First round exit, Game 7 against the Dallas Stars, and kind of an epic collapse. A two-goal lead going into the third period, and then the ghost of our past, Mikko Rantanen, put an end to our playoff hopes and sent his former team packing. Just want a little bit of reflection from that, maybe just from that game, from that series. And we're going to talk about kind of the direction of the team, beyond, this next season. Looks like some decisions were made about coaching. We'll get into that. But what was your kind of takeaway after our untimely exit from the playoffs?
My take, to be honest, is they don't have enough killers in that room. Or rooms to close out a series, right? That's why closers get paid more than your 7th inning reliever. And they, having a bell cow running back to be able to milk out the last 4 minutes of a game, right? Salted away. You need your end run, your run ender in the NBA, or your, who's going to take the shot in the final moments.
Yeah.
And that I don't know that I would say that the Avs don't have the pieces, but they don't have it. Whatever that is, to be up 2 goals, Game 7, with like 13 minutes left, and then to lose in regulation. So not only losing, overtime or something like that's hard enough, but to lose in regulation with a 2-goal lead, with half a period to go, when you've been the better team for the most part in this entire series, I think I would see Salami, they lost 6 out of 21 periods in the, and then to lose, but that's Dallas has that thing, and the Avalanche don't. Then gut punch to lose it to, Mikko getting a hat trick in the 3rd period to close you out. I know that they're boys, he said it as much.
Yeah.
But I do it to you. I do it to, you show me a friend, I will show you a gut punch. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna let you oust me. Nope. And so that in and of itself, I think, is just another example of the, maybe that's really the missing piece of a guy like Nazem Kadri, is the all out. Nope, we're not letting this happen. It's a little bit of why I was excited about Russell Westbrook coming to the Nuggets. Was Russ isn't going to let it turn off, and they might lose to a better team, which we'll talk about for sure. But not because the dog isn't in him, and I didn't see that from Makar all series. Outside really of the first few games for Blackwood and Mac throughout the series, there wasn't really a standout amongst the group. Nope, I'm playing above my head, and we're going to make things happen. So contributions from guys, but I think a lack of get her doneness, and that was some of the issues that I've had for this team for a bit. They've only been out of the second round, 2 times outside of the cup run. Haven't been to a conference final outside of the cup run. You can't diminish the cup run because you did win a championship. If you win a championship every 10 years, you're one of the best organizations in all of sports. So let's, I will not diminish that. And sports is a what have you done for me lately league. The players get older, that window closes, and they don't grow Nathan McKinnon's and Kale McCarr's on trees. I've tried. I got bamboozled, I think. Internet scheme, and so I that's my take. Just they miss, that dog or maybe, Gabe wasn't around enough this season to feel like he could do that. Whatever that might be, maybe that's Bednar, maybe he's too laissez-faire, right? Like too quiet. Kind of needed someone to call a timeout after that first goal and pull him over and say, like, this isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
You break your neck out there. That's the only way you come off. Get it done, guys. And I'm not a huge proponent of that kind of pressure on athletes, but more like young athletes. I think when you're professionals and they've been trying to get over this hump, Nathan McKinnon's famous. Like, I've been in the league 9 years and haven't won shit, right? Like, so he's won something now, so he knows what it takes to get there. And if they got over that hurdle, they're the favorite to win the cup. And that was the biggest hurdle. And they had an opportunity to do it, and they couldn't take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, my takeaway, it's tough. I have mixed feelings, right? My initial feeling is that we should have won that series, right? You are winning, like you said, the majority of the periods that you played against this team. Even in that last game, you're out shooting them pretty handily. You showed in game 5 that you could come out and dominate and just and take over the pace of the game. But for some reason, they just weren't able to do that down the stretch. And I don't exactly know to attribute that to. I think part of it is they're still forming with this group. I think that you brought in a lot of new pieces, and they are still learning how to play together in a way that's more fluid and less experimental. I think a guy like Netchus, I think, is going to be a really good piece for this team. It remains to be seen if he'll be a playoff riser in the future once they kind of all start to gel a little bit more. I just think it's hard when you are making so many changes to a roster mid-season to have that continuity of play and that comfortability throughout each line. And I just wonder if maybe that was the thing that contributed to them just falling short. I think the talent-wise, I think everyone would say they were more talented by far by the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year. Yeah. But we've seen with other teams, you acquire talent doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win it all. So do I think they needed to do more and could have played harder? Yes. I don't know that I have as big a question at goaltender, but I think that Blackwood has to prove it in the playoffs. Obviously, he had a couple good outings, but you don't win a series, and you are arguably in a playoff series. The goaltender can be the most important player on the ice, and Dallas's goaltender was killer. He kept them in several games, even the games that were getting out of control. He really tried to keep them in. And that was a response that we anticipated but didn't know if Blackwood can match, and I don't know that he did. I think he had moments, but I think overall there's still more to be seen there, and we'll have to see what that ends up looking like. The Avalanche did not fire Jared Bednar, did not make a change in the front office, so they're standing pat at least for another year. They did fire an assistant coach. What's your feel on that? Do you think that they needed to make a shakeup at coach? Do you think that they needed to make a change in the front office, any of the above, to maybe wake this team up a little bit? Or do you think that are you okay with them kind of being a little more patient in their approach after getting ousted in the first round?
Yeah, that's so Ray Bennett, the special teams coach. So yeah. I mean, it makes sense in the aspect of the power play was not good. And if they were even remotely good on the power play, they probably win this series in 6, maybe 5, So is there a connection? That makes sense. There needed to be at least a change. So to me, this was the bare floor. I'm okay that McFarland and Bednar will be back. That said, I would have been okay with. I think I would have had more forgiveness actually for McFarland staying. I thought McFarland made some really good, strong moves to make this roster deeper and talented, solved the goalie problem that we've been harping on for a bit, all in one mid-season, right? And so to me, Bednar, the knock and worry before the cup run was, is he the Michael Malone of, that, or George Karl, or is he the coach that's good enough to get you built up, or John Fox, right? But just doesn't have what it takes to outcoach the best in the game and be a consistent title threat. And I think that question still remains. I think that Avalanche team of yesteryear was by far the most talented Avalanche team in 2 decades. And so did it take Bednar to coach that team for that team to win? Could we have won it? Maybe. So I do think it's hard to say that you are a championship or bust. If when you bust, nothing changes, then let's not call it championship or bust. Let's call it, we want to play real good.
Right.
And so to me, if I were the Cronkies, I'm not, but if I were, or if I'm Joe Sakic, I think it's, hey boys, you got one more run. It's make or break this season. And a lot of it, to be honest, is how it looks, but a first round failure is unacceptable. It doesn't, and to me, it doesn't matter who you're going to get in that first round. I think understanding, if we are going to be an elite team, you got to be at least right game 6 or game 7 of the second round, where you're almost there. You're with the best. Some conference finals appearances, because right now, then the Avalanche aren't an elite team in the NHL.
Right.
I mean, you're one of the best 16 teams, but you're not in the top 8. And it's not like they've gotten the Dallas matchup every year. Right? You lost to the Kraken. You lost. You lost to Dallas. You lost. I mean, there's just the Wild, the Blues, the Knights. So I mean, it's when you remain, the constant, you got to look inward. And so, what are we not doing, or what's different? Is this style of play transferable to winning consistently in the playoffs? And I would say it is. You're up. Essentially, you lost 2 overtime games, right? Did you lose 2 playoff overtime games? Yeah. I mean, puck bounces one way. We know how weird playoff hockey or overtime hockey can be. But you're up 2 with 13 minutes left. Why the gas pedal wasn't on. I think guys got tight. I think it should have been, let's go make it 3-0. No one comes back from 3-goal deficit, right? Like that's the dreaded 2-goal deficit. That's where I hear that all the time in hockey. It's like that's the worst. And it portrayed that way. So if I'm Bednar, it's your job, man. And coach like you, if you don't win, you won't be here. I think there has to be some heat under that seat, because if not, then let's just say we want to be really good and stop selling we want multiple championships. We want to be in the conversation. Sure. Then we are. And then let's just leave it at that. So the fans at least then can plan our emotions accordingly when it comes to playoff time. So that's I'm okay that everyone's back. It'll be interesting because this roster at some point changes will have to happen, because it's an expensive roster with more guys that will come up for some extensions and things like that. So you're gonna lose guys. So how long do you grin and bear it before you hit reset? And that to me, I think, give them one more good run together, and then do some real soul searching.
Yeah, and it may even be more urgent than that, right? Like if you get off to a slow start next season, then and you're not ramping up come All-Star game time to really win that division. Yep. Then maybe you make a change at that point, right? I mean, we've seen crazier things happen. If the expectation, like you said, is Stanley Cup or bust, then that's got to be what you're building towards. And if you're not building towards that mid-season, then you've got to feel like you've got to make some sort of move.
Yeah, then what are you doing?
I think the only thing that you could really point to McFarland and say, and maybe not every move that he made was.
No, not every move that he made was roses. He's not bulletproof. If I were to lean it, I think he's done a better job in his job role right now than what Bednar has done getting it out of it. So I want to be clear. I'm not crowning him yet. We know who he was and we let him off the hook.
I'm just saying, unless you think that the Mikko Rantanen trade was the wrong thing to do, then I could see where people would come from with that take, like, hey, let's get McFarland out of here.
But I don't think it was the wrong thing to do, and we said it on this podcast that at some point you got to make that move. And I don't even mind when they made it. I know it was early, but you got good return, right? Not just in Jack Drury. Jack Drury has kind of solved that depth center role. He's 24. He's going to be around for a while. Probably pretty inexpensive. Yep. And who knows, right? Like he could grow into a much more meaningful player. But maybe the negotiation relationship, I wasn't in the room. Maybe McFarland was a guy that, isn't a good negotiator. Maybe he didn't negotiate and assigned it out and, all that stuff. So I agree with you. Oh, that's a good point. I don't know where the responsibility for that lies. So if you thought that got fumbled and in the end, he's responsible for that, because, we're not going to fire Joe Sakic barring, I don't know, tidal waves of whatever. Like Joe's going to stay in that spot for life. So I think that's a good point. So
let's shift gears. I think we've got a lot of things to cover. I think the Avalanche, it will be interesting to see what they do this offseason. How many people that we made moves for we retain, if any. Yep. I think Brock Nelson's probably on his way out, but as those kind of
I think Brock Nelson is the one guy that won't be under contract that creates a big void if he goes. Yeah. Would you want him back? I mean, understanding what he'll cost, and would that be a guy that you'd want to see back? You know what? Like, yep, I want them to go make that investment, or hey, you know what? I think they could probably get similar production for less, maybe, or maybe a guy that fits their style better.
I would probably be more apt to take a risk on him, maybe a tier lower guy that maybe fits your system a little bit better. I thought when we acquired Brock Nelson, I thought it was a really good acquisition. After watching them play through the end of the regular season and into the playoffs, it felt like he wasn't really a good fit. And I don't know if it was because of his line mates, or I don't know if it's because of the system in which they play. I mean, he's a decent skater. I don't know if maybe his age contributes to that, or maybe he just has a hard time. He played in one franchise his whole career, and with the Islanders. And so making that transition can be difficult, I'm sure. Maybe given some time, he could figure it out and learn to play within the system, and we could find guys that he plays well with. I think you're more likely to find success just trying to plug in a guy that fits into the system, as opposed to trying to force a good player to play in a style that you want them to play.
And there's going to be some other oldie but goodies, right? So John Tavares will be a free agent, Nicholas Backstrom. I mean, there'll be some guys too that I think if you're gonna, Michael Granlund, guys like that who are similar in age, right? 1 year, 1 year deal kind of guys to do that. But yeah, I agree with you. There's some youth that you can hopefully mold into good players. But yeah.
Nelson's tough because he's really likable. He was obviously a favorite from the Islanders. Like, people were devastated to see him leave. He's one of those guys you want in your locker room. But I think when you're looking to elevate to the next level, you need someone who's bought in fully and who is maybe hungry for an opportunity. I don't know if that was Brock Nelson. He may have been hungry for a cup, but I don't know that he was super stoked to leave his team and end up somewhere new. I just think that if you can find guys that fit your system and you can mold them into what you want them to be, whether they're experienced or young guys, you probably will have a little more success striking gold, so to speak, than you will just trying to fit kind of an awkward puzzle piece into a spot in the jigsaw puzzle that it doesn't quite fit, So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they develop that. The problem is you're kind of back to square one when it comes to second line center, and that's kind of where you were at the beginning of the season, right? We all kind of wondered where the center depth was going to be, where that second line center was going to come from. You go and you get a player that has pedigree, but it didn't work out, and so now you're kind of lost, either left filling that need with maybe a lesser skill kind of guy, or overpaying maybe for an older dude that isn't a great fit. So there will be some interesting moves that they'll have to make. It'll be interesting to see if they make some trades, trying to get someone that fits that more perfectly than whoever's on the market, or if they just say, hey, this is the best available guy for the job, we need to go pay him. All remains to be seen, but we're going to be doing that with McFarland and Bednar under in leadership, and so we'll see what that ends up coming to in the off season. We're going to talk Broncos next, just a little bit. We want to do some rookie projections. We've got the off season activities coming up pretty soon here. It is a little later. It just feels like, man, it feels like April and May have gone by so quickly already. Not that it's deep into May, but I feel like May just started and we're already a weekend. So, really off-season workouts, mini camp, training camps are not that far away. And I'm interested to get your perspective on where you see these guys slotting in, or who may or may not have success early on as far as these rookies go. So why don't we just go through the line, down the line. I'm sorry, Barron. Everyone's well aware of Barron and where he came from, what kind of a player he is. Where do you see him fitting in best with this team? Assuming everyone's healthy, where do you kind of see them most likely slotting him?
Yeah, I think he's going to get an opportunity. Oh man, it's
I know the first one is hard.
Inside out. I think he'll. Okay. I think that Jaquan regressed last year, or at least was the weak spot of the defense, and really in the back half of last year got taken advantage of quite a bit, and is a guy that really struggles and cannot play outside, or at least has shown that it's not as easy for him to be able to do. Big Jade Barron gives you a little bit of doesn't have to come off the field. So I think he's going to compete with Riley Moss. And I wouldn't be shocked if he plays more snaps than Riley Moss due to his versatility inside to be a third safety. So I think he's going to be, I really like it. I think you wouldn't have drafted him at 20 when you had a trade to move down and address, multiple needs. If there wasn't an immediate vision for him being a chess piece or a guy that you can move around. And I think based on the addition of Talanoa Hufanga, there we go. Really, that second corner is the weak spot, right? You got Brandon Jones, who was phenomenal last year, Hufanga, who has been an all-pro, Pat Surtain, who is the best defensive player in the NFL right now. And then you have that other spot. I mean, he's going to get some opportunities. He has great ball skills. So I think he's going to get 3 picks. I think he's going to play in all 17 games, hopefully. I think he'll be second in the corner room, and probably even the defensive back room on snaps, but I mean, definitely in the corner room to Pat. And I think that he'll be a strong contributor in the nickel to start. And then I think that he'll probably more than likely be a mainstay. I really like Riley. First round investment's different than a third round investment. And I think, I think he'll be much more of a long-term piece than Riley probably will. So yeah, I like it. I think he's going to be a starter, because the nickel is. I think Jaquan played 70% of the snaps last year, something like that. And so I would assume even more for Barron.
Yeah, I agree. I think I see him ending up usurping Jaquan, and not that I dislike McMillan. Macmillan, sorry.
Macmillions.
I think he's a player, and he can definitely play in this league. I think that he is. I think what Barron will give you is more support in the running game from that position, which I think is something that they showed that they needed down the stretch last season. I think towards the end of the season, you saw us get gashed by some running backs. For as good as that defense is at creating pressure, we need some individuals that are mainstays, and we know Barron is a guy who is not afraid to go downhill and tackle. He makes pretty good reads off the ball, off man in zone. I think he can come downhill and be punishing in the running game, even for a slightly, at least height-wise, undersized, but he's certainly heavy and strong enough to, potentially force some turnovers. I think he's probably best at that position or at safety. And I think right now, unless someone gets hurt, you have your starting safeties in place. I don't think you get Hufanga if you're planning on, obviously they weren't planning on drafting Barron because they didn't think he would be there. But I don't think you pay a guy and then immediately usurp him with a first-round draft pick. I think you find a way to make both of those work. And unfortunately, for McMillan or Moss, I think that makes one of them the odd man out. And I think plugging Barron in at the slot gives you better personnel on the field than taking Riley off versus McMillan. So I think that's where he'll end up slotting at. I'm excited to kind of see him in that role. I think he's certainly strong enough, certainly aggressive enough to play down in the slot. I think he will match up well against some of those guys. And I think he'll create turnovers from that position. So I'm excited to see him there. I will be interested to see how much run or how much opportunity he gets to play on the outside. I have to imagine they'll give him a decent amount of reps in training camp and preseason games just to see how he holds up. And if he usurped Riley Moss, I wouldn't be all that surprised, just because Moss hasn't been all that healthy since he's been with us. He had some games where he struggled, especially against really good wide receiver twos. I don't think he's a finished product by any means, but I also think that, you have to believe that he can develop into a legit number 2. And if they have doubts about that, and think that Barron can kind of come in and supplant him, then it will be interesting. It's something we're going to be keeping a close eye on as training camp rolls around and where those reps come in. But if it were up to me, day one, just based on personnel, I would go at slot. I'd put him in that slot for sure, nickel, and let him kind of create havoc and get physical, which is something he likes to do.
Yeah, and it's something that this defense, I think, wanted more of. That's why you got Hufanga. That's why you got Dre Greenlaw. Yeah, because you wanted some dogs, and I think Barron is. I think he's another one of those guys.
You think they'll run any 5 DB sets?
I think a lot.
Yeah,
I think a lot. I wouldn't be shocked with PJ. I wouldn't be shocked with PJ or with McMillan if they go 6. If they go in the dime, especially with PJ, because I think with Barron and PJ. Or Hufanga, like you can rotate those guys down. I think it's going to be. I think all of those guys are going to be necessary. One, injuries, etc.
Right.
But look how multiple that they can be already. We talked about that, and I think you could vision, or you can see the vision pretty clearly in terms of at least like how you can attack the offense in a variety of different ways. With multiple makeups or compositions of those guys, you couldn't do that really last year, right? So especially is your second safety, Devon Key, guys like that. Like those were good players. But now when PJ is your third, and Barron's your fourth, or flip it if you want, and that's extremely nice to think about the complexity that you can create for a quarterback. It hurts my brain, and I don't have to line up.
Right.
Imagine if you're, let's see, Russell Wilson, because we're going to get the Giants. You saw Herbert, who was super confused his last game of the year. Sure. Cam Ward, all the stuff. I mean, guys that we'll get some good opportunities to really mess with some people, and the fact that Jade plays fantastic in zone. I think is harder to play than man in terms of really making sure that your keys are right, that you are responding to the right spot so you don't create excessive windows, that you can tackle in zone. Being in man when you're right there on top of a guy, it's a little bit easier to reduce yak. As a zone coverage, you got to be able to come up and make a sout tackle when there's more space, which I think is harder to do. So, at least gives you that versatility. So I like it. I think all of them are going to be necessary. I don't think you're moving on from anybody this year. I think this probably last year, McMillan for sure is a Bronco. Just he deserves an opportunity to go sign a deal and get some run elsewhere. But it's the best secondary on paper that they've had since 2015. So, because Damari Mathis, at least, Kayvon Webster was a really fantastic player who never saw the field, 3rd round pick. Great special teams, Damari, long arm, like all the stuff. So iron sharpens iron. But let's go to our next rookie.
Yeah, this is going to be the easiest one probably. It's RJ Harvey.
Yeah. I think
back.
The question for you then is over under. I'm going to ask you, Mike Clay, ESPN, projected that RJ Harvey would have 189 rushing attempts. 823 yards with 5 touchdowns, 60 targets, 46 receptions, 350 yards, 2 additional touchdowns, being the 22nd ranked PPR running back in fantasy football in the NFL. What say you? Do you feel like if those were his numbers at the end of the year, how would you feel about
that? I think it would be a solid rookie showing. I want him to hit 1,000 yards rushing, and it's difficult to do, especially for a rookie back. But I think that he's going to be mixed into the running game, but I think you want to establish him as a runner first and foremost, as opposed to, maybe a gimmick guy or a guy in the passing game. I think that they'll continue to use their receivers and guys like Marvin Mims in the passing game, maybe a little bit more than they will Harvey at first, at least, and kind of gauge how his hands are in the passing game or how he's able to get open and get downfield. I think that still remains a bit of a question mark. I think he has the capability to be able to do it, but for that to translate to the next level is a completely different question. And so I think first and foremost, I would hope that I mean, obviously he's going to be the bell cow back, right? He's going to be the primary rusher on this team. I'll be interested to see how quickly they kind of allow him to be that guy.
Right.
How many snaps he's going to be sharing with that backfield. I think we've seen enough from that backfield aside from maybe Estime to know what you're going to get in a game. I don't know that there's a lot of mystery as to what is available to you. Maybe if you really you think Batty can come back and give you something in the running game, you take a chance and give him some carries because he did look good prior to being hurt.
Yeah.
But I think that RJ Harvey's your guy, and I think he's going to be your bell cow. And I think you establish him as a runner behind this offensive line first and foremost. And I hope that you can get 1,000 yards rushing, because if so, that really changes the landscape of your offense and what you're asking Bo Nix to do on a game-to-game basis.
Yeah. If he plays 17 games and averages 52 yards rushing a game, he'll eclipse 900. I think that's a pretty easy ask. So I think 823, only if he's dinged up for a handful of games. But I think if he's not averaging 60 yards rushing a game, something's wrong. So I think at minimum that's that. I like the receiving target. I think 45 catches for a guy who wasn't that in college, and more just the system that they ran, not his capability. I think is a fair, is a fair ask. Ideally, you're going to have other guys that are getting more targets, and so you're not relying on him in the pass game, but shows that he's capable. So yeah, I think 1,400 all-purpose yards, 1,300 all-purpose yards.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair ask for the 60th pick, a guy that they targeted and really liked. Again, it's like I don't think that you go get that guy with that kind of draft pick in a draft this deep of running back. And not get another one. And mind you, they also didn't sign another one as an undrafted free agent.
Right.
And so it's right now it is RJ Harvey, it's McLaughlin, it's Estime, it's Batty, it's your Michael Barton, your fullback, and or Bidet, or Blake Watson. And if that's the plan, then I expect him to produce. And I'm excited to see what he can do behind this offensive line, because they haven't really been able to, I think, maximize their run blocking capabilities because of the rushers that they've had over the last couple of years.
Yeah. Well, I think that one was definitely going to be the easiest. Let's go to the next one and jump to Pat Bryant, wide receiver, Illinois. I think this one's a little trickier. I want to get your take on it. We have some good pieces in that room. We have some good young talent, young in quotation marks, I guess, because Bailey's not that young, but some good new acquisitions to this team. Some still question marks about overall development at that position with guys like Mims. But where do you see Bryant making an impact or being a fit within that room?
Yeah, I think that I think it's going to be interesting. I think that he will be pushing for wide receiver 3 by the end of the year.
Okay.
I think it's a little bit of replacements, something Franklin, right? Going up. I'm the only one coming down with, and a guy, I think that, what is it, of his 66 targets, like 64 or whatever were for first downs or touchdowns. Like if that even translates, kind of, if I'm a quarterback and that's the return I get every time I hit that guy in the chest with a football, I'm going to get that guy the football. And if you're coaches, you're going to get that guy because he produces, right? And I think they really lacked a chain mover last year. Tim Patrick leaving, I think, was that guy. And I think recognizing that and having that. That said, you brought Evan Ingram in, who I would assume is going to be a high volume target. I think he'll have 65, 70, 75 catches. So then there's only so many footballs to go around, especially if you're going to run the ball more effectively. So I would say, if he has 35 catches, 40 catches, but they kind of pick up as the year goes on, I'd be pretty happy about that. So if, give me 30 catches for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, I think for a guy that most people scoffed at when his name got announced, I think that would be a good turn. I think if it's more than that, either he snatched the wide receiver 3 or 2 away from the other guys, or someone like Franklin or Vele really stumbled in the second year. So it's interesting. You got a third-year guy, a bunch of second-year guys, and a rookie that you're really trying to divvy up some opportunities for, and this is really going to be a cream rises to the top. Same in the running back room, right? When McLaughlin is your elder statesman, that's competition. Hey guys, like there's opportunity for any and everyone to be the man, right? Like we're not looking for a guy to come in and catch 20 passes. We're looking for a guy that wants to dominate and be on the field. Yeah. It's gonna be pretty exciting to see how it plays out. But I think Pat Bryant, he's gonna come in and be as valid of a contestant for those roles than anyone else. I mean, he's the 3rd round pick. Troy Franklin was a 4th round pick. Devon Bailey was a 7th round pick. And even though those guys have a year in the system, I mean, where you get drafted matters, especially by the regime that drafts you. Right? Yeah. So they thought highly enough of him, so much more than they did the other 2 guys last year. And so to draft him in the 3rd round when you have both of those guys on the roster after drafting them later, I think that goes to show what they think of him. So I think he's going to be a solid contributor, and I think he'll be a guy that will be kind of a mainstay in that lineup by the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, the room is a little crowded now. You got Bailey, Mims, Court, Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant, Trent Sherfield.
And Trent Sherfield, I think he's only caught like 11 or something passes last year, but I think like 7 were for first downs. Yeah. And so he's been a guy that when he gets out there, he's been a capable player. He just, he has this, his money gets made in the special teams. And so even him, he's a vet, 6'1", 205, like that. None of them are. Marvin Mims by far is the most vertically challenged, and the rest of the guys are dudes. Hopefully, hey, who can win on a slant? We need a slant god on this team, and that room is crowded. I'm here with it, man. Like we were so bereft of talent across the board on this roster that it's so nice to be like, man, some really good receiver is going to sit on the bench a lot.
Right. Yeah, and it is interesting. Like you wonder, okay, Pat Bryant and Devon Bailey, do they have a little bit of overlap as far as what their skill set is? And can one of them kind of bring more juice? You kind of feel the same with Mims and Troy Franklin. Okay, they're your vertical threats. They're guys who can play down the field. But is one of them going to outshine the other and ultimately force the other one kind of onto the bench? Yeah. I am not exactly sure. I think I could see Pat Bryant getting as high as wide receiver 3. But I think things have to go well, and I think he's got to give a lot when as wide receiver 3, you have a lot of duty to block in the pass in the running game. You have a lot of duty to run routes, like you're going to catch the ball, even if the ball is probably not going to find you. I think he's going to have to put in a lot of work to show that he can kind of move up that pecking chart. I think that Sherfield is interesting. I think he was an interesting addition to that room, and I think he's someone who could surprise people. He's coming from Minnesota, who obviously has a good stable wide receivers every year, including their top guys. And so, it's not necessarily an easy room to break into and to get playing time. So I think he's going to have probably a renewed opportunity here to kind of get some time on the field. Ultimately, I think Bryant is probably, I hope, best case scenario, I think he's your wide receiver 3. I think more likely he's your wide receiver 4, 5. I like Bryant. I was pretty excited about them acquiring him. I think he can play on the outside, and I think that's something that they're looking for, is maybe a more steady outside receiver. Obviously Mims has that ability too, but he is more of a weapon in space. And so you kind of want to be able to move him around, and maybe Bryant ends up, if Mims doesn't kind of emerge as your wide receiver 2, because he just is more valuable, moving him all over the field, then maybe he plugs in and is wide receiver 2 at very, very best. But I think it'll take some time. He's a 3rd-round guy. His scouting was, the Broncos overvalued him according to a lot of scouts or people in the NFL circles. So it'll be interesting to see if that reach was worth it, or if maybe he is maybe he was acquired a little bit higher than he's in. And so
I don't think they go grab that player if Sean Payton, I don't think you grab again in the 3rd round when you're really trying to make some progress and go deeper in the playoffs for a project, right? So that to me is like they got him there, 1, because they thought someone else was going to take him before they were up again, and 2, your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd rounders are all early contributors. 1st rounder should be a starter, no question. Your 2nd and 3rd either are or should be by year 2 or end of year 2. And so I think he's more polished and ready to play than I think Marvin Mims was. And so really it's kind of him and Devon Vele, the fact that he already comes in as a really good blocker, I think allows for him to be able to even get more playing time because of his willingness to be a guy that will go dig out a safety, Cooper Kupp kind of thing. It's probably one of the knocks for Cooper now is that he's gotten beat up over time because he would go dig a safety out for a linebacker. And I think Pat Bryant will do that. So I think filling the void that Will Jordan did, while also being a better receiving threat, I think bodes well for his opportunity to kind of get traction later. So we'll find out if it's a reach. But really it doesn't even matter now did they read, did he not? It's how's Sean going to fit him in? And is he a guy that earns trust from Bo Nix and the offensive coach staff pretty early? Because you saw it with Troy Franklin, guy got open, can't catch the ball. You stop seeing the field, right? This isn't a developmental league. This is a business, and you got to produce. And I think I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised when it comes game times and he's catching, he has 4 catches, 3 of them for first downs and 1 touchdown, right? Like that. Might not be gaudy numbers, but it'll be noticeable, I think, for us.
For sure. We only got time for one more. So, pretty. Jeremy Crawshaw is probably going to be a starting punter, so we don't really need to talk about that much. I think that Caleb Bonner's interesting, but it's definitely a flyer, a guy that hasn't really played the sport. And
if he isn't on the practice squad, I will be pleasantly shocked. He's developed more as a blocker than I think we were anticipating, which is, to me, is the hardest part actually to probably come into and understand. I think running routes, especially when you're a good athlete and getting open, catching the ball, I think that stuff can figure. There's nuances, but the technique in strength that it takes to block grown men, most of them are bigger than you. I think that's going to take some time. So if he breaks camp on the 53, I think we're going to have to reevaluate what his production will look like or his influence. I think out of maybe the 2 defensive players, so Savion Jones and Q Robinson, so Savion should play more of a 5 tech. I think he's going to be a special teams guy. I doubt I think he'll have some opportunities, but not a lot. And I don't think he should. I think, when you got Jonah Ellis, Nick Benito, and Jonathan Cooper, and 2 of them you're you're paying and or will pay, they need to get their run. And so him being kind of the fourth rusher or Tillman
too.
There. Yep.
Yeah.
I think if he comes in and is a good, solid special teams contributor and the upside is visible, I think that that's a great ask. I think Savion Jones should be able to come in, and take a spot from a Jordan Jefferson or Jordan Jackson. Jackson, I don't even know which one's all the stuff. But I think he's a guy that really should be, by the end of the year, should be firmly in the rotation and even kind of a preferred substitution. You really have to find out if he can replace John Franklin Myers. So I think he should, I would say Savion Jones has 3 sacks, and 30 tackles by the end of the year. And I think the better he can hold up against the run, the more likely it is that he is a guy that sees the field more. Being 280 sounds really big. But when you're going against a 320-pound left tackle and a 325-pound left guard, 280 isn't as big. And so can he be able to hold up against the run? I think that's going to take him some time, just some technique, and he's young. But I think he'll a guy that'll kind of come on as the season, just like Tillman did, right? Who's this guy? Why is he on the team? And then he's got 5 sacks by the end of the season. Like, holy crap. Jonah Ellis, it took him some time to be able to kind of fill in a little bit. So I think Jones will be very similar.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if he's anywhere in the rotation, maybe even, in the first quarter of the season or first half of the season, you'd probably be pretty happy with his development at the point. He does need to fill out a little bit. He probably needs to get some game strength and just some reps. But yeah, like you said, if he can kind of come along like Tillman did or like John Ellis did and kind of eventually start to fill out that frame a little bit, start to understand the position a little bit, I think he's the most intriguing, like, upside guy, I think, that you took a risk on late, so I am interested to see how he's able to break in, if he's able to break in. But I know that he's a guy that we're both excited to kind of see what he can kind of put together. In that defensive scheme. Got to move on from Broncos because it would be horrendous of us to not talk about the Nuggets and what they're doing right now. Nuggets closed out their series against the Clippers in dominant fashion, sent James Harden and Kawhi home. It maybe Harden may never show his face again in public just because another Game 7 no-show.
Or he will show his face because no one's seen past the beard in like 15 years or whatever it is. Maybe he goes incognito, shaves that bad boy off. No one will know who he is.
He'll show his face and dominate until the next Game 7 and then disappear again. But regardless, Nuggets played on Monday night against the OKC Thunder, coming out of a real slugfest against LA. I mean, that series was incredibly physical. It was a hard-fought series up until that last game where the Nuggets dominated. And then they came out against a very different stylistic team in Oklahoma City that won 68 regular season games as, some people are saying arguably one of the best defenses in regular season NBA history. And your Nuggets
one of the deepest rosters in recent memory.
Rosters for sure. And the Nuggets come out and, with some help, pull out a win and get Game 1 in OKC to get home court advantage in this second-round playoff series. Amazing showing by Joker, 44 points, 22 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 or 3 steals, 2 blocks. Just an overall dominant game by him. I think that in that series, that's going to be the most difficult thing for Oklahoma City to handle. Not just Joker, but the rebounding that he brings, the size that he brings. We were watching the game together on Monday, and I said, when he was being guarded by Hartenstein, I said, he looks so much bigger than Isaiah Hartenstein. And Isaiah Hartenstein is not a small dude. But just kind of looking at him next to Chet and Isaiah, was like, I don't know how these guys are going to stop him. Both of them got in foul trouble. No, Nikola also got in foul trouble. So that's something he's going to have to keep an eye on. Probably not elbow Lou Dort in the back of the head. That probably is not a good look for him down the stretch of a game. But I just want your takeaway from that first series, and then just how the team has responded so far in game one, and then we'll talk a little bit about projecting forward.
You know what? Like that, the Nuggets didn't play well as a team. So I think putting that out there, that they were able to stay connected enough to even have an opportunity to win the game late while playing, it was hard to say that Nikola has 40, 20, and 8, right? And throughout that game, I was like, man, this isn't a great game for him, and that goes to show his greatness when it's like anyone else puts up that stat line and I'm probably buying a t-shirt, So I think that was of note, that this team maybe is tougher than we thought, or maybe we're concerned about, to show the mental and testicular fortitude to hang in that game, to chip away at it when it almost got out of hand, like 3 or 4 times. And they made enough plays to keep themselves in the game. Shout out to a guy like MPJ he's not right. And make some mental errors and still is in there to contest some shots, get a couple rebounds that you need. So usually game one is the game that you can steal. And they did. And I think that this gives the Oklahoma City Thunder a ton to think about. We played pretty good basketball for most of that game. We're better and deeper at most positions, and we still couldn't beat them, and they split through the season. So it wasn't like the Nuggets finally figured out something. They've contended with this team all year, and that's what you saw on Monday. That said, Aaron Gordon, he by far is my favorite Nugget and probably basketball player right now, and not because of what he can do off the dribble or other stuff. It's like he has that grit that I think the Avalanche doesn't have, right? Like, I'm going to make a game-winning play, and it will be whatever it needs to be. And to have a guy then like Nikola, who will make the basketball equivalent of like that, with a guy that will make the heart kind of play like that. And not that other guys aren't, and Nikola doesn't, but that's like, he will contribute selflessly no matter what. And that is for a guy that averaged like 30, was number 4 overall pick, was a guy that averaged 30, for him to come here, get paid, and still be a guy that will come off the bench like he did this year, rebound, dunk, like whatever it takes. And I know that he physically isn't right. Losing your brother right before the season, like, there's every reason for him to pack it in and be like, you know what, we'll get it next year. And he has never once gave that indication that he's not all in and he doesn't believe in the guys, and you're seeing that play out. So I am pleasantly surprised about what the fight was like on Monday. I actually think that this game's going to be much closer. I think naturally this would be a game that you could probably let go. You came in, you got the split, but I think that this team kind of feels it a little bit now, like that. By far, that first matchup you and I talked about, that was the best matchup of the NBA first round playoff series. That Clippers were a team that was playing the best basketball from February on in the NBA, or second best. And so to take those punches and get through it, now you're playing the team with the best record. And like you said, one of the best defensive. They're long, they're athletic, they're young. They are 8 to 10 deep, and that's if you shorten the bench. And for the Nuggets to come out and do all of that stuff, I think hopefully gives people the glimpse of the yesteryear team, right? That there was something just about that group. Bruce Brown wasn't a guy that, again, I think has ever averaged more than 10 points a game other than that one season. And KCP wasn't exactly the boat raiser, but all of those guys together. And I think right now you're seeing that a little bit. So I'm expecting that they give OKC all they can handle in this series. Do I think that they'll win it? I don't know if I'm willing to go there yet. But I have more confidence in them having a realistic opportunity to win it than I did Sunday night. That's for sure. And it wasn't because they came out and dominated and played good basketball. It was because they didn't, and they found a way to win. And I think that really is more transferable to me than you beat a team when you're hitting on all cylinders. Yeah, it's NBA. You should. You have a lot of guys that make a lot of money. But what do you do when you're not playing well? Does Russ pass that ball to Aaron Gordon instead of trying to stick it to his old team and be the hero, right? Like, those are the things that I think don't necessarily get noted in a stat sheet, but goes to show that this group believes in each other and is willing to do what they need to do to win.
Yeah. That to me, that Aaron Gordon shot to me was, it was amazing. I was thinking about it yesterday, and it, to me, it was just such a moment of being ready to take that shot.
Yeah.
We know as fans, like, he has been putting in the work on that outside shot all off season. His shooting has been way better this season. And it was the fruition of all of that work and having to manifest in that one moment. And he was ready for that moment. And it's because he was prepared. It is because he put in the work. And I think that is really something that's overlooked, because the moment's so big, right? Like, the moment's so big, could have been anyone. It just happened to be Aaron Gordon. He went up, hit the shot. You don't necessarily expect it. But I think if you're a real fan, you kind of, you maybe didn't expect it, but you knew that it could happen. And you knew that if he had the ball there and he was taking that shot in the moment, that there was a chance it was going to go down because he put in the work.
His 3-point percentage last year was 29%.
Yeah.
This year it is at 43.6%, which is, like, that's not better. That's good. That's insane. That is a trusted, like, I'm going to kick it out. You're going to make a three almost half of the time. Yeah. Like you said, he put in the work. That didn't just happen. He isn't a naturally good 3-point shooter. That's not, he's never averaged 40% from three in his career.
Yeah.
So this year, not only is it above 40%, it's a significant bump, without reducing how effective he is from anywhere else on the floor. Playing less minutes, scoring more points than last year, all that stuff. I love that you said, because he put in the work. He knew what he needed to do for this team to be better, and he went and did 100%. It. And it was visible, and you saw that in the confidence when he got the ball. Like, he took his time. Like, he didn't rush anything. It wasn't a panic. I'm getting this. I'm loading up. I'm shooting. When you get a 7'1" guy, closing out on you, and it was all confidence. Like he said, they said, "Did you know it was in?" He said, "Well, I knew it wasn't a miss." And that's a shooter mentality, right? If I let the ball go, it's in. And that, to me, again, I think goes to this team of, like, yep, I'm willing to do what's necessary, even when you're not watching, right? That's I think that the take of it. Do you think that they win game 2? Let's go prediction time, baby.
I would say probably not, and not because I don't think they can. I'm hoping that it's if nothing else, that it's a tight game. I also worry that you've played 8 games in however many days, and OKC has had some rest, and now that they got a game under their belt, they're going to come out a little more fired up, and you're going to be a little fatigued. And that's my worry with this game, is that maybe it could get out of hand and they punch back. But you got that first game, and so when you come back home, then you're ready to resume kind of your previous status. So do I expect them to win tonight? Not necessarily. I think they always have a shot with Jokic. If he decides he wants to go win that game, there's a good chance that he can go do that. And so, and there are just some things that the Nuggets are going to, there's just problems that they present to Oklahoma City that they don't have answers for. And part of that is just size and rebounding. Like, you can play Hartenstein and Chet out there together, but that limits maybe not your ability, but maybe your 1-2 to play Caruso because he's not a scorer. And then if you have Hartenstein, who's an okay scorer, and Chet, who's an inconsistent scorer, and Caruso, who's played great, shot the ball great on Monday, but generally is not a great scorer, you're taking a lot of what makes your offense successful off of the court. And I think that is dangerous territory for them to be in. And so I think that's why that they kind of did the rotating bigs on Joker instead of rolling both of them out. So I I am interested to see what kind of adjustments they make to try and improve that rebounding. But I think it's just an advantage that the Nuggets are going to have this whole series. And I don't know how Oklahoma City overcomes that. It's going to take a lot. They're just going to have to be better. Like they don't have the personnel to change it. And so they have to be intentional and better on the glass. And I don't know, with a guy like Jokic and a guy like Gordon and even a guards like Brown and Westbrook, those guys are so good at what they do, and they're so good at finding ways to impact the game without the ball in their hands, that it's going to be a really difficult task for OKC. And if anything, that gives me hope that this series can be won by Denver.
Yeah. To be honest with you, I think that they do win today. I think watching what Indiana did to Boston, I think, that there's like that team has it, right? Like where it's like, we're just going to get it done. And we don't care who the star is and how it happens. And we don't have a guy that's too scared to, you saw Nikola Jokic in the fourth quarter. And that's what makes me feel like the Nuggets can win the series, when the best player in the world, especially when you need him to, isn't having a game that he missed 2 critical free throws that would have put them up 1 and make things, way easier. And when you watch him do a jab step 3 in the face of Hartenstein or Chet, whichever one of those guys it was, but just like, it's that time, and if you got that guy that can do that, and you can even get a little bit of improvement from a guy like Murray or a guy like MPJ or even Christian Brown, who I think has been a pretty good player for most of the playoffs so far. I think they got a shot. And I think if they weather the first quarter, to be honest with you, I think that makes me feel way better. Yeah, this really should be a game where OKC puts it on them and probably rubs it in a little bit. And so I think that they will win, and that's just my optimism. Probably if I had to bet money, I think it's a game that you drop because you got one. But I think for them to win this series, I think that they have to plan on winning 2 on the road, because OKC's that good that you probably won't be able to keep and hold serve, or can't count on it like that, like a necessity. But really quick before we go, since the next time that we'll be on, it will be, I think, at least to game 5. What's the series at going into game 5?
I'm going to say 2-2. I think it's going to be a 7-game series. I just do.
Yeah, me too.
I think Oklahoma City's too deep for us to just completely wipe the floor with them. I think there are things that they can't counter, but there are also things we can't really counter very well against them. So, and part of that's the non-Jokic minutes. And so we're going to really have to work in those times. But I think if you go in 2-2 into game 5, you're giving yourself a shot to win this series. And that's all that this team needs. Really quick before we wrap up, I know you got to run. I just want to put in perspective that if somehow the Nuggets can make it to the finals or win a championship, this is a run that could change the legacy of Jokic's career. If you come out and beat LA, that is the hottest team going into the playoffs, with Kawhi healthy and James Harden playing at the top of their peak, their top of their ability. You have OKC, who's people are arguing is the greatest defense ever in the regular season. You come out and you beat either Golden State or Minnesota, a team that knocked you out last year in Minnesota, that is built to beat you, or Golden State, who is just, has one of the all-time greats in Steph Curry. And then you end up playing against potentially a Boston team that everyone wanted to see that matchup last year. That's a gauntlet, man. That's a huge, huge gauntlet that any team, if you make it, even if you make it to the finals and don't win, it's a testament to this team. And not to mention your coach and GM got fired 3 games from the end of the season.
Unprecedented for a playoff team, right? The only other time it happened, that team was garbage, like way back when. Yeah, I agree with you.
And not to mention the Jamal narrative.
At least 3 MVPs, finals MVP. If he even gets to the finals, let alone if they win it, I actually feel pretty good about their chances against the East, much more than I do them getting there.
Sure.
If you think about that, if he were to win, he probably is going to be the most valuable player in the finals. You get 2 finals MVPs, 2 trophies, 3 MVPs. Potentially this is the greatest stretch run or prime in anyone ever. With all respect, obviously, to Michael Jordan, that's probably like it. But next to that, I think he really does get himself into the goats talk.
Yeah.
And
I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. Obviously, there's
I do. That's why it's fun.
But it is fun to look forward and just say, like, man, if that's the pathway, then that's something that's going to be really special. So let's hope that they can pull it off. We do have to run. Unfortunately, we went over time, but we appreciate you guys being here. Be kind to one another. Be safe out there. And if you need a sports prescription, ask a doctor.
Sure.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Tempo's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute, work hard for the car, so that's why it's all tinted. Wait a minute, had a real late night, woke up with my